Okay, let's get started. Tonight's lesson is on the home buying process. And the first hour, I'm going to be talking to you about the very best ways to go about buying a home or not buying a home. And these are some recommendations on my part, and it's all based off what I believe is best for you. Not for the real estate industry, not for the government, not for private business, but for you. So focus on what's best for you going forward in the home buying process. First thing I want to talk about, Alice in Wonderland. What does that have to do with buying a home? Well, because so many times in our society, the buying home process is sold to you as if it's some panacea. You buy a home and all is going to be wonderful. No, that's not how it works. Home ownership is work, and it's full of problems and difficulties. It's going to cost a lot of money. All those problems come with home ownership. Now, doesn't mean you shouldn't own a home, but I want you to know there's a lot of problems that come with the home. So don't think for a minute that just because you buy a home, life is grand. You're not in Alice and you're not in Wonderland. Next up, debt. My simple recommendation to you, go into the home with no debt. My recommendation is to eliminate all of your debt, every single dollar. No credit card debt, no car loan, and no school loan. That's my recommendation. Will that take some time? Yes. But it will reduce the amount of stress in your life when you move into that home, I promise you. Now, this again is not the kind of advice you're going to get from most people out there. But I'm here to tell you, eliminating that debt will reduce dramatically the amount of stress you're going to have in your life as you and your spouse move into that home. Get rid of that debt. Next up, moving. 5 years. 5 years. Think about that number. If you think you're going to move within 5 years, I would not buy a home. Would not. Why? Because there's a lot of costs that come with buying a home. It's not just a down payment. It's not just, buying a couple rugs. You're going to have a lot of costs that come with home ownership, especially in that first year. It's going to take many years to overcome those costs. So if you don't see yourself living in that home for at least 5 years, I would rent. That's my advice to you. And there is nothing wrong with renting. Again, that's another one of those things you hear often in our society. Oh, rent is money thrown down a gutter. No, it is not. Renting may be the best option for you at different stages in your life. If you're going to be moving around a lot in your life, keep renting. Don't go through that home buying process again and again and again. Financially, you will not benefit. Job security. Job security. Do not buy a home if you are not very stable. If your job is kind of iffy, keep renting. It's not worth it. Because if you lose that job, you got a big problem. Because that mortgage payment is due every single month. Do not put yourself in a situation where you lose that job and you lose that house. Only buy a job when you have a secure job. Your position is stable. Now the problem is you only know what you know. Meaning you don't know what your job's going to look like 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from today. But you do know what it's like right now. And you can be honest with yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is a good situation I'm in right now. Now might be the time to buy a home. Focus on that job security. It's a big issue. Next up, relationship. Now, no, I'm not in the marriage business. So don't worry, I'm not going to give you any marriage advice. But I will tell you this. If you don't have a rock-solid relationship, I wouldn't buy a home. Wouldn't do it. Because that home is going to bring more stress into your life, not less. There's going to be some discussions on how we're going to decorate it, and how we're going to improve it, and how we're going to maintain it, and how we're going to pay for it. All those issues take place. You want to go into a relationship and go into that home rock solid. It's very, very important. If your relationship is kind of dicey, keep renting. You don't want to buy that home and then go through some kind of separation or divorce. Yes?
Could I just make a comment about backing up to job security? Back when the housing market crashed and people lost their jobs, they were underwater in their mortgages, so they couldn't move to find another job, or they'd lose their house, or they had to sell it for a lot less than what they owed on it. So renting gives you that ability to be able to pick up and easily go somewhere else where the jobs are.
And that's a big issue. Being able to move to another job is a big issue. Thank you, Glenda. The starter home. The starter home is pushed by many people in our society. What is the starter home? The basic concept of a starter home is you settle for a home that you really don't necessarily want. It's not as nice or as big or something that you really want, but it's okay. So you buy it, you live in it a few years, you sell it, and then you go buy your bigger home, the home of your dreams. I'm not a fan. Not a fan at all. You'll never hear Finley tell you to go buy a starter home. I would tell you, only buy a home that you love, only buy a home that you think and see yourself living in for a long, long time. Because again, we go back to the cost of ownership. That starter home is going to cost you a lot of money. Because, and gentlemen, I got news for you. You walk into a home with your spouse, she is not going to see that as some dump that they're going to live in for the next 4 or 5 years. No, she's going to fix it up. And she's going to have things looking nice. And she's going to make sure that happens. That's going to cost you plenty of money. You're going to spend plenty of money fixing up that house to look nice, and then fixing up it again to sell it so it looks nice to the next person, so you can buy that home of your dreams. My advice, don't do that. Wait, keep saving your money, and buy the home of your dreams. That's the first time I brought up saving your money. It is imperative that you develop the habit of a great saver. You want to be that great saver who learns how to save their money, gets rid of debt, builds up a kitty of money for that down payment. As we go forward, keep thinking through that process. Be a great saver. Do not move into a home just because you can barely afford it without learning how to develop those saving habits. So, avoid the starter home. Next up, the investment. And I have an example for the investment. We talk about, and people hear this all the time, a home is an investment. And believe me, I bought into that for a long time. I bought my first home because it was an investment. I believed that for years. I didn't really quite want to, believe the evidence that was presented to me. I say, no, because these other people are telling me it's a great investment. No, your personal home is not a great investment. I don't even call it a good investment. I don't even really call it an investment. It produces no income, and it's going to cost you a great deal of money over time, more money than what the appreciation and the taxes are going to do for you. And I know that's like, whoa, Finley, whoa. But let's talk about this a little bit. Let's say you buy a $200,000 home. You can expect to spend, on a yearly basis, 3 to 6% on that $200,000 home. So that's going to run you $6,000 to $12,000 a year as you pay property taxes, insurance, maintenance on that home, and some of those upgrades that maybe your spouse says, you know, we got to have that. We got to have, this is ours. We got to make it ours. It's very easy to start entering this category. And a lot of times when people talk about a personal home as an investment, they don't count the upgrades. They don't count the maintenance, the insurance, the tax. They all factor in. Those are all costs incurred with that property. And here again, I'm not trying to scare you away from the home buying process, but what I do want you to know is what is coming. Too many people get in a home and then they go, oh, wow, this is a lot more expensive and a lot more stressful than I thought it would be. Know these matters, know this information prior to buying. So, when you buy a home, don't buy it because it's an investment. Buy it because it's the place you want to live in, you want to raise your family, and you love it, and you can afford it. Take your investments, go buy those no-load index mutual funds we've talked about. That's how you're going to grow your money, because those things, those costs are dirt cheap. Instead of 3 to 6% a year, those no-load index mutual funds are going to cost you 0.1% a year on your investment. Maybe 0.12, 0.15. Big difference. Next up, the tax deduction. The tax deduction. We hear that all the time. Oh, yeah, you're going to get this great tax deduction when you buy a home. Yeah, it's not what they make it out to be, especially for low to moderate income families. Let's look at an example. $15,000 in itemized deductions. That's an example of a home that you bought. Those itemized deductions are your property taxes and the interest that you pay on that home. So let's say, in this case, you had $15,000 in itemized deductions. That's what people are talking about when they say the deductions for the home. You got 15. No. You didn't get 15,000. No. We have to start deducting some things. $12,200. That's the standard deduction for a joint account for a man and a woman. You would have gotten that anyway. You would have already had $12,200 in a standard deduction. So what you only really got was a difference of $2,800. That was your actual benefit. So you're thinking, okay, well I got 20. No, you didn't get $2,800 either. No, it's a deduction, it's not a credit. So now we have to subtract our marginal tax rate. That's the tax rate on our last dollars earned. I use, in this case, 30% as a general rule of thumb. That's about right. It's going to vary per state, per person. But the marginal tax rate is your income taxes, federal and state. So in this case, let's say our marginal tax rate was 30%. Our actual savings wasn't $15,000. It was $840 for the year. Now that's something. I'll give you that. That's something. But as you can see, it's not some huge deal. So who gets the biggest deal from buying a home? Well, it's the high-income people. They buy the big homes. Instead of a $15,000 itemized deduction, maybe they have a $115,000 itemized deduction. So those are the people that are going to benefit. So then it's easy to take that jump and say, oh, I just need to buy a bigger home. No, that's not what you need to do. No, I'm not saying that. You only buy the size of a home that fits you and your family. We've talked about the taxes part, right? We don't want to pay more property taxes just to buy a bigger home. So I'm not here to tell you to buy the bigger home. I'm telling you that the high-income people get the best tax deductions. But if you're a low to moderate income person, don't let people try to convince you that the deductions are great. They're okay. They add a little to the equation.
I just want to interject too, with rates being so low, very few people even have enough, unless you're buying one of those more expensive homes, very few people have enough to even itemize. So let's say you borrow $200,000, you might have $7,000 in mortgage interest, maybe.
And if that does not go over the $12,200, you'll have no itemized deductions. And of course, as the years go on, say it is a bigger home, you're going to have less in interest. You may fall under the standard deduction then as well. So again, I'm not discounting the deduction, but it's not a reason to buy a home. Next up, first PMI. PMI. Anybody? Private mortgage insurance. Very good. Brent, you knew that. Very good. Private mortgage insurance. So here's an example. You have to have 20% laid down for a home, or you're going to pay PMI. Now, the mortgage industry, the lender, they can get you a second mortgage maybe with a little higher interest. Maybe they can figure out ways to get you in the home. You're going to pay more money one way or another by not laying down 20%. Don't let anybody convince you that somehow you're special and you can only lay down 5% and not pay PMI because, you're a great gal or a great guy. So, let's take a look at an example. You squeeze into a $240,000 home because you love it. The problem is you have not developed effective saving habits. So all you have is 5% to lay down. And you're like, well, but I love this home. I don't want to wait. I want it now. So you get it now. And you pay PMI, and that's going to run you $156 a month. And that is money thrown down a gutter. And you're going to pay that until you reach equity in that home of 20%. And that can take many, many years. Because in those first few years of owning a home, it's primarily interest that you're going to be paying. You can run those numbers. Paying PMI is not necessary. Develop those saving habits. Wait until you have 20% to put down and buy that home. If you don't have 20%, wait. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I really would encourage you to take this message to heart. Do not let anybody push you into buying a home. If you're not ready, wait. So if somebody asks you, when is the right time to buy a home? When you are ready. That's the right time. Next up, I want to discuss briefly the 401k. I've seen statistics. Many people raid their 401ks to buy a home, to deal with home expenses. That's a huge mistake. Huge! They're stealing from their future to buy this home. Now, why is that happening? Well, every individual case is different, but in many cases, people just want to find a shortcut. I don't want to save for that down payment. I'm just going to steal for my future. It's easier, it's quicker, I can go do it. So I'll borrow from it, and then, I'll pay it back with interest. It's all good. I know people who've done it. No, it's not all good. It's a terrible idea. I would never recommend it. And if you want somebody to say, oh, it's a good, well, don't come to Finley, because I'm not going to tell you that. Do not rob from your future for today. You know, that kind of goes back to much of what we've talked about throughout this semester. If you live for the moment, you're going to pay for it in the future. If you sacrifice in the moment, you're going to have a bright future. Those are choices we all have to make. Do not rob from your future. Next up, the Roth IRA. This is what I believe has turned out to be a wonderful down payment buying home account. It was designed originally as a retirement account. But in many ways, it's a beautiful option for you to save for your down payment. Before I get into this, there's a disclaimer on this. I would never recommend this procedure, this process, this idea, unless you have a retirement account at your work. You know, a 401k, a pension, something that is building for your future retirement needs. If you have that, this idea can work. If you don't, you should use that Roth IRA for your retirement. That is all you've got. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what if your work retirement plan isn't as good as, say, a Vanguard, your account?
Yeah. You have to weigh that. You do have to weigh it. The plus is at work, you're going to be able to put in a lot more money. So, for instance, this year you can put in up to $17,500 into a 401k. This year for a Roth IRA, you can only put in $5,500 into a Roth IRA. So you're definitely going to be able to maximize more money into your work plan, and many plans, not all, have matching proceeds, and that's free money. So, but those are issues you do have to think about. So let's take a look at the Roth IRA. Let's say husband and wife, they both start saving money, $5,000 a year. Actually, this year you can put in up to $5,500, but I'm just going to say $5,000. And they do this for 5 years. So she has $25,000, and so does he. After 5 years, that's what they put in. That's their contributions. In this case, we're giving them $5,000 in earnings because you're a very wise and efficient investor. You've selected index funds or target date funds that are consumed with index funds because they're going to grow at the highest rate with the lowest cost. And each of you have ended up with $30,000. You can take all of this money and use it for a first-time home buying down payment. That's a hell of a deal. That's $60,000. Now, what about penalties, taxes? You could take $25,000 each, so that's $50,000. You can take $50,000. You'll pay no tax, no penalty, no nothing. You can take out every dollar you put into your Roth IRA without any penalty or taxes at all. Your contributions can be pulled back. They've already been taxed. Yes, Glenda?
For what purpose? Any purpose? Or just to buy?
There are multiple reasons, but there's only multiple exceptions. Buying a home is one of them. First-time home purchase, and there are a couple other reasons, but for this presentation, I'm focusing on the home purchase. So, you can also take the earnings up to $10,000 per person, not combined, but per person. You can pull that out, not pay a penalty. You will have to pay taxes on that money, but it won't be that much. And you can use that money for your down payment as well. Here's the beauty of this approach. Let's say you're going to buy a $200,000 home. So you need $40,000 for the down payment. That's 20%. Well, you both take $20,000 out of your Roth IRAs, so you both still have $10,000 left. No penalties, no taxes, nothing. You lay it down for the home. You move into your home. And when you move into your home, you got a retirement account at work still going for you. And you have an emergency account sitting there waiting for you as you walk in your new home. Fully funded emergency account. You didn't access any of your savings because you took it all out of your Roth IRA. Because here's what happens to a lot of people. They scrimp and they save, and they take every penny of their savings, their emergency savings, for that down payment. So then they get in the home, and they're excited. But as any homeowner knows, here comes the cost as you move into the home. And if you don't have savings, it starts going on the credit card. And that's how debt starts piling up. And then all of a sudden that home can become a burden to you and your spouse. And pretty soon that burden starts building separation between your relationship. So you don't want that. The Roth IRA approach can dramatically reduce the stress of you going in that home. You've laid down your 20%. You're not paying PMI. You have a retirement still going at work. And you have an emergency fund there to cover some of the costs that you will incur as you move into your home. That's a wonderful deal, folks. And that's for the couple who have planned and prepared to buy their home. That is a wonderful opportunity. You'll be so far ahead of the crowd. Because I got news for most of the crowd, they're paying PMI. They're not putting 20% down. And whatever they did put down, it was all they had. And sometimes they pulled it out of their 401k. That's not the way to go. I believe that Roth IRA approach is an effective way to do it, so your future is bright going forward. Next up, 30%. 30%. A lot of numbers are contained in the mortgage business. My recommendation to you is do not have a mortgage payment higher than 30% of your gross income. Now again, take my advice, I don't want you to have any debt when you go into your home. So you don't have any other debt. So you have one piece of debt, one, and that's your mortgage payment, and it's under 30%. So what am I talking about, 30%? Well, let's say you and your spouse make $6,000 a month. 30% of that is $1,800. Now here again, this is gross, we're talking gross income. $1,800. So what I want you to do is keep that payment, which is your principal, your property taxes, your interest, and your insurance. It generally gets all balled up into one. I want you to keep that under $1,800. Now you think, yeah, that sounds okay. A lot of lenders will let you go beyond that.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah. And why is that, Connie?
Because of all the defaults.
Yes.
Lenders, I can tell you there's times where I could get a loan approved with a 70% of their income to 12%.
Okay. So.
That was automated underwriting for you.
Right. And let's take that case in point. Because a lender is willing to give you money, we've talked about this, doesn't mean you should take it. We have to take responsibility for our financial lives. Stay under 30%. Go into that mortgage with one debt, your mortgage, that encompasses all of this. Know that number going in. If you want a bigger home, put more money down. If you need to keep your number under 30%, then maybe you put down 25% on that home, if that's going to serve your purposes. You decide that, and you decide how much you're going to take out of your Roth IRA. You notice all these things kind of come together. There isn't, I'm not telling you to go in this direction, they all come together. You can use all these strategies to put yourself in that home with the least amount of stress and the most amount of opportunities going forward with your life. Keep it under 30%. Final thing I want to talk about is the type of loan. There are a lot of types of loans. Do you have a number, Connie? Could you throw out a number? How many types of mortgages do?
There's really 4 products, which we're going to talk about.
Okay. But offshoots of those 4. Okay. Yeah. Dozens? Can we say dozens?
Hundreds.
Oh, God. Okay. So, once again, hundreds. I'm going to keep it real simple. I recommend 2. 2. Okay? So, we don't have to complicate this. I would tell you, many lenders, based off of government policies and people trying to get in homes, we have made quite a bit of exaggerated loan programs to get people in a home. It's because they're not ready. Hey, I don't have any money to lay down, but I want to buy a home. Well, no, you shouldn't buy a home. This is part of the preparation stage. So I want you to focus on 2 types of loans. It's only 2 types of loans I've ever considered. It's only 2 types of loans I recommend you consider. Because again, if you follow the advice, you're not going into a home with some short-term mentality. You're going there to live there a long time. So I want you to focus on fixed-rate loans. A 15-year fixed-rate loan or a 30-year fixed-rate loan, meaning that payment stays that amount for the entire length of the loan. Now, it doesn't really quite do that because that payment involves property taxes, and property taxes generally go up over time. So it will go up slightly, but your principal and interest, that number is going to stay the same, except over time you'll pay more principal and less interest. Insurance can also go up over time. But that fixed rate loan is going to keep that payment pretty close over a long period of time, 15 or 30 years. I strongly encourage you to focus on that 15-year loan. Why? We take a $200,000 home, $200,000. 15-year loan, let's say we get an interest rate of 3.5%. A 30-year loan, 4%. Why? Well, as a general rule, you can look at cutting your interest rate by 0.5% by simply going down to 15 years. Many lenders will drop it 0.5%, maybe more, but it's going to be based off the current interest rate environment. So, you're kind of thinking, a person would think monthly payment, $1,530, it's going to be twice the amount. Yes, sir. Oh, you betcha. Your credit score is going to have a big impact on that interest rate. So the higher, and we've talked about this in previous lessons, the higher you get that credit score, you go above 700, you go above 750, you get yourself in the high reaches of the 700s, you're going to get the best interest rates. And that's going to save you thousands and thousands of dollars. So exactly, which I was getting to, but you're exactly right. That interest rate is going to have a huge impact. In this case, because I know you, and you're going to have high credit scores, because you know how to acquire high credit scores, you're going to get the best interest rates. So in this case, on this $200,000 home that you laid 20% down on, so now you've taken a $160,000 mortgage Your payment, which does not include insurance, because I don't have that, but this is right out of a mortgage calculator. Anybody can run it up on Google. $1,352 for a payment, monthly payment for a 15-year loan, $972 for that 30-year. It's not even close to twice the amount. Not even close. It's not even $400 more. This goes back to something we've talked about in the car payment week, and the credit card week. Don't spend your days focused on the monthly payment. Do not, in your mind, say, I just want the lowest monthly payment. No, that's not, I don't want you thinking that way. The wealthy person doesn't think in monthly payment terms. They think about the total debt they're acquiring and how they can pay off that debt in the most efficient way possible over time. So the 15-year loan, after 15 years, you would have paid $45,886 in interest. It's a lot of money. 30-year loan, it's going to run you $114,991, a difference of $69,000. That's a lot of money.
What if in the 30-year plan you put the extra $400 you're saving into a no-load index fund and you're making 7 or 8%? Wouldn't that be better?
Maybe.
Are you missing the opportunity cost of that by investing in by
Hey,
the 15-year plan?
and I love your thinking, and there's some validity to what you're saying, but the problem is most people don't do that. It sounds good, and you know where to invest. Do you think most people do? No. They're going to take that money and either spend it, or they're going to stick it in a savings account earning 0.2%, you see? And that money that you would be investing in that no-load index fund, which we've taught you that you may be earning 9, 10% over long periods of time. For the next decade, you may make 2% a year because nobody can tell what the markets are going to do from any period of time. So, your idea can make sense. You have to look at the interest rates at that current time. We are in some of the lowest interest rate environments I've ever seen. I've never seen them lower. Most people alive even haven't seen them lower, right? So this is an amazing time. You're going to see interest rates much higher in your lifetime, I promise you. So when you're looking at an interest rate of 8 or 9%, that's a no-brainer, right? You get rid of that as fast as you can. At this interest rate, your comment can make sense, but boy, you got to be disciplined, right, to make that whole difference separate. Yes,
You also
Glenn.
have to make sure there aren't any prepayment penalties on your mortgage.
Yes, indeed. And that's in your contract. So when you go through the process of getting all the paperwork signed, you want to verify that prior to that point. Is there a prepayment penalty, meaning can you pay it off early? Can you put extra money towards the principal? So, 15 to 30 year. I would encourage you to work at getting that 15-year loan. You can do it. It's achievable. A lot of people don't even give that thought. Oh, I can't. That's too much. Well, that's fine, all right? But it's going to cost them more money. And don't let all that interest, right, shake you up thinking, oh, but it's a tax deduction. Yeah, not so much. Not so much. So, the decision's yours. All these decisions, all of this, comes down to you. The decisions you make daily are going to affect your saving habits, how much money you end up in your savings, in your Roth IRA, how much debt you either have or don't have, and then making that down payment. that avoids PMI as you keep your payment under 30%. And you don't worry so much about the tax deduction. That's just a nice little freebie on the side. All these things are important if you make them important. And they're decisions you and your spouse will make together. And I've kind of gotten around to this a little bit, but I want to make this point clear. It's okay to rent. Renting is not a bad thing. Renting is not throwing money down a gutter. In many cases, renting is the right option for you. If you're the kind of person or couple who like to live in different places, who like to stay mobile, who like to keep their options open for different places to live and work, you may rent your entire life. And that's okay. Now, nobody is generally going to tell you that out there. They all want you to buy a home. Well, that may not be right for you. It's okay. You can rent your entire life and be a wise and efficient investor with those no-load index mutual funds and accumulate wealth. And somebody else can buy a home, pay PMI, put little down, have a payment 50, 60%, and they can go broke and go bankrupt. Home ownership doesn't make you wealthy. It doesn't make you poor. Neither does renting. I'd like to leave you with that. Questions on the home process? Yes, sir.
If those percentiles are like average or really good credit scores.
Here?
In your example.
For this interest rate?
Right.
I'd say it's pretty close. Connie in the second hour will be able to describe these numbers closely, but in this current interest rate, I think it's close. What would you say, Connie?
15-year conventional is probably 2.875.
Wow.
30 years probably 4.25. Maybe a little
No, hold. Say that again now. Say the difference.
Well, a 30 years probably, 30-year might be anywhere from 3.75 to 4.25, depending on down payment.
And the 15?
2.75.
So almost 1% difference.
Surprisingly, there's a pretty
So catch that. I gave 0.5%. These numbers get even better for the 15-year loan if you get close to 1% difference. Now, those are amazing numbers. Under 3% is just mind-boggling to me. But saying that, if you haven't heard it, you will. Oh, you're going to buy right now. Interest rates are so low. If you're not ready, it's not time to buy. I don't care how low I don't care if they're zero. If you're not ready, it's not time to buy. Don't let people push you into home ownership. Does that answer the question? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Depending on your significant other's profession, does it make sense to put the house and all the paperwork in one of the spouse's names so that in case you're sued or held accountable for something that?
Well, I don't know that. I'll give that to Connie a little bit. What would you say to that? I think it's going to have to be in both names, but go ahead.
Well, in the state of Iowa, if you are married, your spouse has to be entitled. Okay? But they don't have to be on the loan. And I do, work with couples sometimes that for whatever reason, maybe one's self-employed, has been self-employed long enough and maybe has a lot more debt. Or sometimes I have one spouse whose credit is okay and the other who's not so okay. So you can, a married couple don't both have to be on the loan, but they both have to be entitled. Now going back to the relationships thing, is I cringe a little bit when I see a non-married couple take a loan out together. And the reason why is this. Let's say you and your boyfriend planning to get married, decide to buy a house. You buy the house, you're both on the loan, you're both on title. Things fall apart. Well, what happens in this case, you're not married. So you're both entitled to the property, and okay, one of you says, okay, I'm going to stay in the house, and the other one is going to move along down the road. There's no legal document to release that person from liability. Whereas if you are married, you have a divorce decree that says John is getting the house and he's responsible for the mortgage payment. So that's a big consideration. If
going to be on the hook until that mortgage is gone.
Okay.
If the person doesn't, defaults on the loan, your credit gets dinged for it too.
Whereas if you're married and you can show that, yes, he was awarded the payment, or she, whichever was awarded the house and the payment, that's going to affect their credit, not yours. So in marriage, you are released from liability in the event of divorce.
Okay, thank you.
That's a really good question.
And I would add to that slightly, it's state by state. So whatever state you live in, know those rules. Not every state has the same rules as Iowa, Nebraska, Texas. So keep that in mind. Any other questions?